In the heat of summer, the humid wind blew through the tall grass that surrounded the headstones that littered the park. The evening sun lingered above the horizon, while its light cascaded across the city, calling to the city folk the end of another day. The solemn footsteps of a few visitors to the cemetery made their way towards the exit, while you stood by a simple headstone, staring at the name that was engraved on its granite surface. Your name. 7 years ago. To this day. Fresh blue flowers stood by the headstone, freely blowing in the wind. You found the irony when you spotted them earlier, a tiny gentle smirk tugging on your lips when you turned around to find a familiar tall figure in the shade of a few trees, leaning against one with his hands cradling the back of his head. "How long have you been hanging around?" you asked, watching the tails of his long jacket drift in the wind.
"Long enough,"
he answered, while he lazily turned to you.
"We should get going."
You nodded before you took one more glance at the headstone below your feet. Every year you would come to visit the stone of what your past life was. A third year at UA, and funnily enough, during the Christmas season, a time of new beginnings. Necronus Memorial Park was quiet while you attended your anniversary on the day you were deemed deceased. Of course, they couldn't locate your body, knowing that throughout that Christmas you had been nursed back to health elsewhere in Musatafu. You tugged at your sleeves, feeling the heat before you decided to roll them up for relief. The burn scars across your forearms stretched with every small movement you made. It took a while for you to familiarize yourself with the sensation, but more so the changes physically and physiologically with your body. After application of that salve from the doctor, not only did it speed the regenerative state of your arms, but you discovered something different about your quirk. It was no longer what it used to be. It had changed, and though you were confused by this change, it slowly grew to become a part of who you are now. The new you that had risen from the ashes of that Christmas fire. Dabi eyed you while you walked up to him, pushing himself off from the tree and onto his feet. His lazy eyes stared into yours, melancholic after a handful of minutes staring at your own headstone. He couldn't comprehend your attachment to the event, but he expected as much after admitting to you everything that had happened during that fire after your doctor's appointment all those years ago.
"Come on, Pipsqueak,"
he teased, while he ruffled your hair on his way past you.
"Shigaraki's going to have my head if we don't get back on time."
"Hey!"
You called, following suit after Dabi in the cemetery.
"All right. Sorry for going down memory lane."
Every year.
Well, I can't see my family anymore, or any of my friends, you added, catching a glimpse from him.
"It's hard."
"I'm aware,"
he agreed, rubbing the back of his neck.
"But life is hard, so treat this second lease of yours like there's no tomorrow."
"Is that supposed to make me feel better?"
I thought so.
Truthfully, you did crack a smile at the words he uttered. After spending years under his wing, Dabi turned out to be somewhat philosophical about his stance in life. Granted, you were angry at him for a period of time, having to spend most of your time, 2 years in fact, coming to terms with your unique situation. After visiting the doctor for the first time, prescribing that salve that you had finally weaned off from after years of use. Dabi admitted to the events of that fire. It was hazy for you, remembering his heartbeat by your ear while he held you in his arms, falling from the second-story window. At least you recalled being on the second floor when it all happened. But afterwards, it was a blur, until you woke up in his apartment, or what you assumed was his apartment. You remembered that morning after, sitting by the bed while Dabi nonchalantly explained the ordeal, without any hesitation on his part. You recalled your body trembling despite your ribs still healing from the blast, your eyes watered, tears welling while you tried to hold them in. All the while, Dabi's cool and unemotive voice retold everything.
You died.
His words echoed in your head.
The burns were too grave.
You felt your heart sink.
The doctor brought you back.
For a while you didn't speak to Dabi, keeping to yourself and continuing your treatment for the burnt arms you had. You began to despise the look they became, staying in bed for most of the day and only allowing Dabi to help you wrap your ribs until they healed. It was a hard year filled with sadness, anger, and hate, to the point that you tried to return to your family without him knowing. On the day of your funeral. Now in the present, you sighed in defeat. Visiting your headstone was an irony in itself after learning the truth. Even so, the events that followed after the fires was a roller coaster. Dabi felt the vibrations of his phone in his coat, holding the screen up for him to see, spotting the name across it. He hummed aggravatingly before he pressed a button, silencing the vibrations and slipping the phone back in his pocket.
Shigaraki?
You guessed while you tried to interpret the slightly irate look on Dabi's face.
Who else?
He answered, before the ping of his phone caught his ear. For a while, Dabi ignored it while he continued to exit the cemetery with you in tow.
Aren't you going to check that?
You asked again, earning a lazy stare from Dabi.
It's probably Shigaraki again,
he replied.
He'll see us soon anyway.
Suddenly you received a text on your phone, picking it up and opening it for you to peruse. You hummed inquisitively while you read the words on your screen, earning a glance from Dabi next to you.
It's HQ.
You answered.
Shigaraki again.
No, actually, it's the dock.
Dabi's head turned towards you, now with interest peaked.
She's relayed a location, somewhere in Fukuoka.
You turned your screen towards Dabi for review while you inspected his face, his brow slightly raised upon seeing the location pinned on your digital map.
So, we're after another potential, like you.
He confirmed, watching his step quicken if only a little, and his direction now aimed towards the district.
She did mention that there was one that we failed to obtain.
Twice failed,
corrected Dabi, his voice low.
But you won't, little one.
You hummed to yourself, feeling a nervousness brew inside. Though you had learned to live this second chance at life better than before, it entailed many new developments. The war years ago did not go as planned. Lives had been lost, and many were casualties throughout it. The news of you hearing your fellow UA students being dragged into the ordeal almost sickened you. Of course, having been a third year, you had learnt the nature and risks of hero work, but to hear first years involved, those that had little to no experience on the risks, it made you question the legitimacy of hero society. Still, you have been recruited to become a part of the Paranormal Liberation Front ever since your rebirth, as you'd label it. More so, you had been appointed to replace the tactics team, temporarily until further notice. That was 6 years ago. Noticing Dabi's quickened stride, you followed suit, curious of his sudden interest in this order of sorts. It didn't take long for you to connect the dots.
Wait,
You started.
wasn't that the district twice tried to catch a potential like me?
Yeah,
Answered Dabi.
rescued by none other than the former number 2. I have some unfinished business.
After hearing about all that was lost during the war, it was disconcerting to hear that a hero had killed somebody. At the very least, when you were given the tactics department, Shigaraki had explained the situation, along with Dabi adding his 2 cents afterwards. Even your training and your schooling back at UA had taught you otherwise. Death was never a means to an end. It made you question what ethics and morals Hero Society adhered to afterwards.
Well, let's get going.
You started, matching Dabi's stride.
Don't know how or where the doc got her information from, but they may not be there for long.
Dabi watched your pace quicken, walking just as fast if not faster than his longer strides. The time spent with you over the years had been eye-opening, to say the least. There were times that you'd be a useful asset to his needs, whether that was on mission or not. However, the longer he spent time with you, the closer he became, enjoying the moments he could tease you to no end. A smirk tugged at his lips, almost catching himself smiling before he turned his gaze away from your retreating form. Maybe the doctor was right, he thought, recalling her words when she instructed him to search for you years ago. The pin had led the both of you to an indoor amusement park out of all places, specifically towards an escape room after asking around some patrons on the description of the former number 2. The attendant that looked after the attraction was a hurdle, but not so much for you to barge right into the room to have a look around.
Don't break that open.
You can't just enter!
Don't care.
It looked like a typical escape room, slightly tacky in design but on point with the creep factor. It also reminded you how run-down HQ turned out to be, except for the chains and the dribs and drabs of fabric everywhere. You turned towards the bed, eyeing the placement of the chains before you spotted the open door that exited the room.
Damn it.
You muttered under your breath, until heavy footfalls caught your ear from behind.
Are they here?
Asked Dabi, entering the room.
No, they must have left through there.
You commented, pointing to the open door by the exit.
Don't know how long ago they could have been.
Dabi eyed the timer on the wall, noticing it still ticking down with 15 minutes left, give or take.
Looks like not too long.
He commented. He wasn't familiar with attractions, but at least he knew the attendant hadn't changed the timer yet.
They only had 15 minutes left on the clock. We'll catch 'em soon, little one.
He reassured, while his large palm ruffled atop your head.
The General expects it.
You couldn't help but giggle again from his touch, looking up at his bright blue eyes. You knew who he meant. It was the rank allowed to be mentioned in public.
Of course.
Hey! Leave already!
The bright intensity of Dabi's flames bursted from his free hand, lighting the room with his eerie glow, and to your amusement, watching the attendant's face fold in fear. However, despite the threat, Dabi's eyes shifted to a malicious glare, causing you to reach your hand out to his, entering into his burning flame. You gently pushed it away, your arms glowing a fluorescence of blue while his flames began to dwindle. His intent diffused by your simple gesture. Aside from this minor altercation with the attendant, Dabi and yourself exited the attraction before you agreed to inform the doctor of your results. A few text messages into the conversation between yourself and the doctor ended with an order to return to HQ for a debrief. After all, it was impromptu to ask 2 members out on leave to check up on some business.
Serves her right,
commented Dabi after you relayed the conversation.
She should have said someone else.
Yet you decided to check anyway.
You reminded him before you caught his lazy gaze on you again. A moment between yourselves passed by before he raised his large palm onto your head, ruffling your hair again.
Shut up.
He couldn't help but smirk at the sight of your smile. These moments were hard to capture, and though he still nurtured your growth for his means, he grew to become close enough to show his warmth every once in a while. Exiting the indoor amusement park yielded another text message to your phone, picking it out from your pockets once more. Your eyes widened at the words you read, immediately quickening your step and walking past Dabi in haste. He spotted your form, curious and confused from your sudden change in stride.
What is it?
He asked, causing you to turn around to grab a hold of his hand.
HQ is under attack.
You quipped.
We better hurry.
With that, you tugged at his arm and forced him to keep pace. He watched you from behind, still holding onto your hand, but not pulling away. He smirked at your actions, finding your forthcoming nature to be refreshing half of the time.
You care too much, little one,
he commented.
Well, it's my home now,
you remarked, turning your gaze towards him.
with you.
He noticed a smile from you while you still hurried towards HQ, only to feel his lips involuntarily tug at the corners. It never stopped. Nothing ever stopped, but with your caring nature still a part of you, Dabi found a place to call home.